and choking on his rage and getting up. Can somebody put a marker so that our YouTube person knows we're going to start the game analysis now?
Oh, yeah. Hey, Output Coupler. He wonders, will there be any decisive games this championship?
Yes.
Of course, yeah. I mean, it's likely. I did it.
Yeah, I like when they analyze after the game with each other. I like that.
It could be draws, but it's most
Mm-hmm.
likely. There was only 12 in the last World Championship. There were only 12 games, not 14.
Right, this is 14. Man, he's even using his fingers to analyze. Magnus is like here and there. Yeah.
YouTube person.
Now look at Magnus. He's like, whoa, what's happening?
Because I did it, Bobhead. Robert. Yeah.
Magnus is saying to Jan now, I'm white and I thought you were a wild card. Why you put so much resistance?
All right.
Yeah, what's happening here?
Thank you, GM Tortellino. Yeah, this was a pretty exciting game. Definitely. Both sides had their chances.
They're standing and they're still thinking about talking to each other. They're considering it.
Right.
They're like, should I talk to him some more? I don't
Pull
know.
my pants a little bit.
Yeah, just a little though.
All right.
Yeah.
I guess we're done here.
Yep. Yeah, those guys are good.
Yeah.
So what does it say they played?
Probably not quite as accurate, but still very close.
98.5 for white, 98.8 for black. And those aren't accurate. That's just random.
But it's incredible.
It's always over 98 every game for
considering
both
how
players.
complicated the game was.
Right. The game's super sharp, and you guys are making fun of them, and they're playing like 99.
Yeah.
You guys are like, oh, he didn't play this move. He was winning, and he was losing, and all that nonsense. Yeah. I mean, if white played 98.5, it's hard to believe he was losing. He's white. If you're white and you play 98.5, it's hard to lose. So he didn't lose.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so let's do a recap. Did you guys put a marker for our people?
Yeah, I did.
You did. I don't even know how to do that. Okay. And then Spencer and Karen can help with the recap.
Okay.
You can ask questions and you could select. No, just say like, what are you talking about? Whenever you're afraid to do that, you have to do that.
I do it.
Yeah.
Just remember Eminem. I'm not afraid.
Yeah.
I'm not afraid.
Okay.
Not afraid.
Yeah. I mean, this game was, what was this game? This game was 58 moves, and, maybe one person was winning for 2 moves, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe. Yeah. You guys think Sess is God, but I'm guessing if God exists, which he doesn't, but the God that you think of, it would be a favorite against Sess.
Yeah.
God's like, I'm winning, and then you guys are like, but Sess says it's equal. Really, they would do that. That's like the, American Dad.
Yeah.
When he has the gun on God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why do we have heaven guns again?
Yeah, why do we have guns in heaven? Yeah.
I don't want to be that guy.
Yeah, he has a gun and he points it at God. It's a heaven gun. So God has to watch it.
Which one is this?
American Dad.
I was zoning out for a minute. I'm waiting on the chess.
Yeah.
All right, yeah, let's see what that that recap
Here's
is
here's what's funny about
cartoons.
before I start, I want to say something funny though.
Okay.
Every time there's the best engine in the world, which is always, they think it's God. They're like, in 2005, they're like, oh, the engine says this. In 2008, oh, the engine says this. And then they're like, by the way, the engine now would crush the engine 3 years ago that we thought was God.
yeah.
You guys are always like that.
That's true.
So somehow you think like Sess is God when, then in like 4 years it'd be like, man, remember when we thought Sess was good, but it sucks because, something.
It's so confusing. I can't suss it all out.
Nice. Okay, so they played a Catalan.
Give credit for my joke.
Joke is pretty sus.
Yeah. Okay, so they played a Catalan. Okay, the Michigan-Ohio State game starts in a few minutes. And in this position, Black played the unusual B5. More common is A6. I think Knight C6 is also a move, or maybe that's in a different position. Is that here? No, it's not. No, it's not. It's C5. C5 is a move, right? Yeah.
I only really know.
But anyway, A6 is 90% of GM games.
Yeah, I only know.
Now everybody plays A4 here, which follows my rule of
always play A4.
Play A4. They play B5, and that is the move that Engine gives and all the GMs play. And he had this trick up his sleeve, 95, because he was hoping that Jan wouldn't have analyzed it as much because it's rare. Tax the Rook, Now, if he's not analyzing it a lot and these 3 moves are all possible, that means Magnus is ready for all 3 moves. And probably Jan chose the one that the weak engine says is correct now. And by weak, I mean it's only like 3,400 strength. So c6. Could also play knight d5. You could take this and sack the exchange. Always sack the exchange. And black has 2 pawns for the exchange, although these pawns are doubled. And the engine says this is okay for black too. So it's funny, black could have technically sacrificed material here, although 2 pawns for the exchange, I usually like for the 2 pawns. But he played c6 and then a4, which I insisted would be played.
He did.
If you're a materialist, you could do this and get your pawn back. But, I mean, white played knight f3, knight e5, knight c6 to trade the knight on b8.
Got nothing out of it.
And it's and it's equal material. And this is attacked. I mean, that's just silly. So that wasn't his idea. He played a4. Now he's threatening everything. Now, we're not kidding. So knight d5 is virtually forced here to stop, the latent potential of the bishop. Knight c3, not the engine move, so people were mad. But, Magnus played this very quickly. Now, here's what's funny. And it's possibly true. Very possibly. The first engine line of, again, this isn't CES, is to take and play knight c3. So there's a very small chance, that he messed up the move order. That he knew it was takes a knight c3 and he played knight c3. Okay, that's it's possible. Okay, and the difference between that move order and this one is now we're threatening this when the pawn's not defending it. And after f6, which was played in the game, knight g4 is very reasonable because there's no pawn on c6 here. So, when I play knight e3, you're going to be pretty annoyed. This is hanging, this is pinned. This is more pinned than when the pawn is on c6. The pawn's on c6, I can move my knight, and so what? Especially knight b4. So it could be that Magnus prepared AB knight c3 and forgot. I don't think that happened, but it could be. We'll find out after the match.
C3 could be the move.
Yeah, it could be like Magnus is like, I meant to take and go here. What an idiot I am. But probably he prepared this.
Yeah.
Okay, f6 is best, unfortunately.
Right.
Now, the problem with knight here, which was the correct move with these pawns traded, is now I can play b4. The difference is these pawns are here instead of not being there. When they're not there, my rook is good, and your pawn's not here, so I got some action here. Now your rook's not good, and you got no action there. So that maybe Magnus, maybe I don't know. Maybe he forgot about taking and Dre. So he had to play knight f3, and black's up a pawn. And white has compensation. It's like the last game when Magnus sacked a pawn and his opponent had compensation.
The game did end in a draw, yes.
Yeah. Okay, so e4 attacks the knight. These moves are all very logical and reasonable.
You'd expect them all, yeah.
Okay.
E5, great.
E5's good. Now here the engine wanted to play f5, but you guys were complaining, why isn't Jan developing his queenside pieces? Then when he did, you're like, why do you do that? Hey, you guys are tough. My engine said don't develop the pieces. So Jan decided let's develop the pieces. And
I have no idea when Oddish learned sleep powder.
Okay, so they traded. Now in this position, after knight e4, I thought during the game knight c5 was a threat. I forgot knights could go backwards. But still, knight a6 is a good move because now you guys can't complain anymore about not developing his pieces. If black develops his pieces and white doesn't have winning threats, black's up a pawn. Now here Magnus made an error, I think, and I think another move was an error, and that's why the engine's like, "Rawr, black's doing great." I think if he takes on f6 or plays bishop e3, he's equal. Where'd Karen go?
I'll be right back.
But instead, he played knight e5. And usually when moves do something, now that move really does something.
Yeah.
That means somebody made a mistake. In this case, it was Magnus. So if you're playing an 1100 and you do something, they're like, oh, that's because that, But these guys see what... So like, if Magnus plays king h1, okay, it doesn't matter whether it's good or bad. Jan didn't look at that. Jan's like king h1. So when you make subtle moves like that and they're good, That's good. Your opponent's like, what the hell? When you play knight e5, Jan is like, that's the only move I analyzed, and I thought it was good for me. That's why I played knight a6. And then Magnus is like, knight e5, gotcha, bitch. Okay, so Magnus thinks he's doing something good, and Jan is like, I thought knight e5 wasn't good. So somebody's wrong. Okay, because knight e5 is like super aggressive, it attacks everything. And that means Jan thought it wasn't good. He wasn't worried about it. And Magnus is like, what a dumb Jan. It's good.
Thanks for the subway, Max.
And here, Jan was right. And he played the only way to get an advantage, which is to take with the bishop and then get his knight to c5. That looks pretty good. Okay, and in this position...
Oh, by the way, people in the chat were just saying that Magnus missed knight ac5 according to himself.
Okay, yeah, right.
Here he didn't takes a knight a5.
Right, he thought this is good and Jan's no good.
Yeah.
And if it wasn't for bishop takes a knight ac5, he's right. Yeah. So he didn't see that. So then he's like, oh, okay. So that's, when you do see, and this is why most of the moves in World Championship matches are slow, boring, creeping moves. And when they make a move that wins or loses by force, nobody's allowing that. Nobody's losing by force, and nobody's allowing a move that wins by force. So that move is an unusual move in a World Championship. That means somebody messed up. Either black didn't see knight e5, miscalculated it, or white miscalculated it. And as Magnus pointed out, he miscalculated it. Now he's in trouble. He's going to lose more material. And he can't just trade everything and be down a pawn for nothing. He's got to get some action. So he got some action, knight d6, and that was some good action. Then you guys were mad at him. Oh, the engine says 1.5. What an idiot. Okay.
Right.
I mean, that knight on d6 was good. And that's being a good practical player. When your position's worse, you give yourself the best chances, which doesn't necessarily mean that's the best chances against an engine. It's the best chances against a human. And this move is excellent. And I think, other than his mistake with knight e5, rook b1's also a mistake.
Yeah.
And I think the reason, there's two reasons Magnus didn't play the engine move, which is this. One reason is he doesn't want to give his e-pawn away. He's worried. He's like, well, if this is good, my knight's, then I'm losing more material. And the other reason is Magnus might have thought, God damn, that knight on d3 is pretty good. So if we do this, I'm down material and the knight on d3 is good.
Yeah.
And maybe this is hanging. So he made a decision to get rid of the knight on d3. So now if black wants to win the exchange, he has to give both of his great knights away, which is the correct thing to do. So Magnus might have thought this was better. This pawn's solid, sort of like, today's Marmaduke.
Okay, yes.
And then, the knight on d3 is gone. This is no good. This is good. That was his practical. And then you guys at home are like, boo, my engine says this and my engine says that. All right. Rook a8 is the engine move. It defends the bishop more. It gets the rook on the potential open file, which did become an open file. And he played rook d1 because he wanted to do some tricks. Now here, the engine doesn't like the way either player played. To me, it's very human the way they played. Right. And
bishop a8, right?
The number one engine move right now on the bad engine and during the game was this.
Yeah.
And, I understand not playing that because you got 4 isolated weak pawns and you gave up your c-pawn. It makes much more sense from a human perspective to play bishop a8 because now here comes your rook and this pawn's protected. And again, the greedy engine takes this, attacking the queen, and then just goes back. So we're going back and forth while black is activating his rook and getting his queen off of this file. It seems like it's not worth it. The engine says, hell's yeah, it's worth it. And the players don't do that and don't care about it, and you guys are mad at home because they're not playing the engine.
Yeah, they care a lot about the initiative.
Very reasonable. And I said, right before he played bishop e4, I don't think he's going to take that because a human doesn't want to activate his opponent's pieces, so he activated his own piece. And Jan did want to take this, but he didn't like his pawn structure, so he played c3, and he thought maybe here he would get like an open file and he would get a passed a pawn. And Magnus played bishop e4, so he could attack this. So he played queen c2. He wants to take on h7. g6, reasonable. Take, reasonable. And this is the last position of the game where I think Jan has good winning chances. And he could play either a5 to play b4, or he could play queen g7, attacking the e-pawn and getting rid of this potential attack. And instead he takes it on a4. And now I think probably if both sides play correctly, it should be a draw.
That's right, Mustachiola.
Yeah, I don't think, even if the engine says black's better, I don't believe it. The knight's too good.
Yeah.
It's just too good.
I always liked white.
Yeah.
Admit it. I always
Right,
liked
and when
white.
the engine says black's winning, black's better, black's slightly better, Spencer's like, well, what's the problem?
Yeah, give me that knight.
And you guys are like, I'm not going to look at the board. All I do is look at the engine evaluation, then complain.
But they also look at the material balance that chess.com gives, and they're like,
Yeah.
oh, this says +2.
Right.
It's-
But I
you
mean,
know?
I'm always sacking the exchange on my stream, and then I make fun of my opponent's rooks when I have a knight on d6 like that.
Right. At least black's rooks are decent
Right.
here, you know.
And
Well,
then,
if we're not good enough to, we have to use the tools that we have available.
right, the tools that they should use is looking at the board and then thinking what they think, and then like analyzing that compared to what we say in the engine. Instead, they don't look at the board. They look at the engine and say, those guys are terrible. And you have to look at the board, and Spencer did and said, I like white. And the
I do like
engine
looking at the
said,
board.
I don't like white. And Spencer's like, so what? I like white. Okay. Now, in this position, the knight could move, and then the rook would attack the queen. And so rook b2, which was suggested by the gawking rabble, would be easily refuted by knight c4. So he played rook d8, and he's like, move your knight now. I dare you. I double dare you. And he said, I am going to move my knight, but first I'm going to not hang my rook. Okay, c5, finally trading off this ridiculous bishop. And also, hey, let's trade queens so I can win the endgame. And Magnus, in his Consuela voice, said, no. Now, I have a question. Oh, yeah, my question was here. We looked at this during the game.
Yeah, I remember.
Right, and that loses to the brilliant...
Tactic.
Right, now if bishop takes, the knight takes. That's fine for white.
Remove
But we
it.
take this, removing the defender. And because white's king is on g1, we have rook d1 check Zwischenzug, which I guess we just never need. Like after here and here, we still don't need it.
Right.
But we have it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do anything.
And this is winning for black. If you take, black's up a piece. And if you take this some way, then black's up the exchange for nothing. Right? There's like a pawn,
good.
but okay, here comes this rook, and this
Here comes
pawn's
Utah.
winning. Yeah, this is just winning for black. So he can't take on a7. He can't trade queens.
Boston Hollywood.
So he
Thank you.
played queen c4. Doesn't trade queens. Queen is blocking this, putting pressure on the pawns. Black finally trades. White's threatening knight f6 check winning. So he puts it in h. And now black is up the exchange for no pawns. So if black trades queens, you would expect he would win. Okay? So if you don't trade queens, then this king and these, that's, some weak pawns and a bad king. And this queen's pretty good. So he played knight d6 instead of taking a pawn because he wants to get that knight back on d6, where it
belongs.
just blocks all of the pieces. We could play other moves like queen takes c5, which you guys would play because it wins a pawn.
Yeah.
And then after queen d3, the engine move, we attack the knight, and we're going to trade rooks, which means the king won't be as safe on g1, and we're going to keep our passed pawn.
Well,
So
one
that's
thing,
good
just-
winning chances.
One thing I always tell my students is that when you have a material balance where you're have less rooks than your opponent, like here, down the exchange, you usually want to keep a rook on the board for yourself.
Right.
So they don't have the best piece, like the best rook.
It's hard for both rooks to be active, but it's easy for one.
Yeah,
And
A1 it's great.
Hard to get back rank mated when you have a rook. If you don't, it's easy. So yeah, black wants to trade a pair of rooks, and these pawns aren't going anywhere. White can take those pawns later, but white needs to play knight d6 and block all of black's pieces. Because god damn, that's a good knight. Man, that's a good knight. I like the knight more than you guys do. I'm sorry. Okay, rook here. Potentially he could trade and be a pawn up, and he's going to lose this pawn.
Right.
And he wants to double rooks and trade rooks, as said. And that's what he tried to do. king g2. Now he can't trade rooks because it's not check, and then we just go here and win.
Knight f7, etc.
Yeah. So after king g2, he defended his pawn. And if he trades queens here, that's probably a draw. In fact, I think this would have been an easier way to draw. This also draws, but he wants to trade queens and not lose his a-pawn. Very reasonable. Keep your a-pawn, you could win. And Magnus, when asked, you want to trade queens, said no. And played excellent king h3. Excellent.
Yeah.
Very Karpov-esque, by the way. Now, that king is very safe. Black can't trade queens. White has a pawn for the exchange. White's knight on d6 is great. The engine says equal, equal, equal. Human grandmasters and masters want to have white here because that knight's the best. This pawn potentially could queen. This pawn's blocked. This pawn's isolated. This king is open. This king is very safe.
Surprisingly safe.
White has all the advantages except black has a rook for a knight and pawn. So the engine says it's a draw. And in my opinion, which you guys won't agree with, this was an amazing decision by Nepomniachtchi, was the correct decision.
Yeah.
Very good decision by taking this.
I was critical of it, but it
Excellent.
just forced the draw, basically.
Excellent.
Because he
Yeah.
doesn't want things to get out of
Because
hand.
he's going to be worse. If we keep playing and playing and playing, if you don't sack the exchange, that knight's just better than a rook. That knight's great. That knight can sometimes even transfer.
Oh, yeah.
So this is an excellent decision. And when this happened, I explained to the confusion of most people that these two pawns would be lost, this pawn will be lost, and white won't be able to avoid the trade of queens, so it'll be a draw. And then
did
Karen's
say all
like,
that.
what are you talking about? You crazy husband of mine, right? And then all that stuff happened. Because I am crazy,
Yeah.
but I'm good at chess.
It's obvious. It's obvious the pawns were isolated in targets.
weak,
I just
yeah.
wasn't
Yeah.
sure about the trading of the queens. How that
Right, and when the king on h3, I was like, how's white going to avoid trading queens? He's going to get perpetual checked? I mean, he's going to trade queens. And the 3 against 2 is just an easy draw. So this is really nice understanding from Jan. Now, the engine doesn't necessarily want to go here because
the draw,
that
basically.
forces the position where white's a pawn up and not winning. So white wants to chill like queen e4 and move around a lot, which is still a draw, but maybe white has better winning
I'm
chances.
surprised he didn't do that.
Yeah, probably Magnus gave up here. He's
Yeah,
like,
he
all
probably
right,
was like,
whatever.
okay, you got me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard not to trade queens, even if you go here in king g2, like queen c6, queen
Yeah,
queens, I don't know.
Rook c8 and such.
So after this, it's just a clear draw. This was just very...
Yep.
And rook f8's excellent. You don't want your rook over here where somebody's going to check and take it. So
Thanks, this guy from that movie.
after rook f8, we got a lot of threats now. A lot of
Right
threats.
back at you.
Lot of action, right? All those moves are threats. So he played f4, and we can't play queen h5, queen f3 anymore, which we could with the pawn on f2, and we can't take this pawn anymore, so we play the third threat. The engine literally didn't care. It said, just play queen
Everything
b5,
is okay.
go here, whatever. This king is safe on h6.
But you don't want to defend with the queen.
But yeah, Jan knows this is a dead draw, so he's like, whatever, 3 against 2. Same side of the board is almost always a draw. And there's no winning plan for white here unless white plays rook e5.
Oh, queen g4 doesn't avoid the trade.
Yeah. Can't play g4, f5, can't play h5. So you got to play rook e5, or black just moves his rook back and forth.
Oh, it's Hunter x Hunter. We were talking about this, remember? When we were talking about X?
Yeah. Okay, so as I indicated on the stream, white wants these 2 pawns to come off the board, so he has a passed f pawn, which is also a draw.
Yeah.
And black said no, and played the excellent king h6 here. So now I don't see a winning plan for white. White can't play king g5. Now, if you let white play king g5 and you kick him back with a check and he goes back, now these pawns will be traded.
Yeah.
Which is a draw, but good for white. Then black has to play well. Now black doesn't have to play well. Black plays rook here. Like, all right.
I know, yeah. I always say Hunter, Hunter, and people are like, do you mean Hunter x Hunter? Yeah. And I'm like, no.
All right. So he played king h4 because this is the only winning attempt. Is g5 check, then maybe winning. Maybe. And he said, let me check you a few times. And now the only winning attempt is to play g5. So he did. And it's 2 against 2 on the same side. And this king's no good. If the king decides to be good, then white's worse because h4, h3, h2. Still a draw, but it's a pass pawn.
Because the X is like a punctuation. Memphis R.
Yeah, and then they just drew.
Right? Memphis R.
Yeah.
Memphis RX.
Then they agreed to a draw. Now I think if Magnus had played here, I guess they would have played this variation we discussed,
Zing.
and then played h6.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, you can't take because you lose your rook, and it's just a dead draw.
Yep.
There's nothing you can do. It's like, this is a dead draw.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of just going into a dead drawn game and playing, Magnus is like, enough is enough. And at this point, Jan was very upset that Magnus played on so long, so he kept hitting him, and then the arbiter showed up and said, eight is enough. Yeah, that's enough.
Hunter Z Hunter is 2 more than X. Yeah, that's true.
Okay, so this is the final position of the actual game. I did some analysis there, sorry.
Right.
And the final position is he played rook a4, he defended it, he checked, he went back, and then rook
They only
a4.
repeated once.
Oh, this is my line, right. And then after rook a4, Magnus said draw, and they shook hands. They discussed the game for a while. So for a few moves, Black had a big advantage. They're having a press conference now, and they're talking to the players about what happened, and they're answering it. And these press conferences go about half an hour. Yeah. Now, these press conferences are pretty friendly, and they will not be friendly when one of them loses.
Yeah.
Then the guy who lost is going to be like, F this and F that.
Yeah.
And then they're going to say, but sir, who was your second? And he's going to say, I can't say, but his initials are R.O. Son of a...
Is tomorrow a rest day or
Hey,
game
don't we have
day?
more moves? Let's finish the recap.
No, that's it.
That was it?
That's it. No, game ended here. So, very well played game. Both sides had chances. It was very interesting, double-edged. Again, the cap score, which doesn't matter, says they both played really well because they both played really well. And right now, in my opinion, these two may disagree. From just the first 2 games, Magnus hasn't shown that he's better than Jan.
Agreed.
He has shown in the last 12 years he's better than Jan, but he hasn't shown it this match.
These 2
This
games,
match,
I agree.
they're playing about the same strength. Yeah.
So Nepo offered the draw?
No.
Or
White would
Nepo can't
a
offer a draw.
well, because he was down a pawns. Well,
It's even
not
pawns here,
even
but he
now.
wouldn't offer a draw here.
But you don't offer a draw
Well,
when
who
worse.
offered the draw?
Why would you do that?
Magnus just said draw. He didn't even offer it. He just said the draw.
He's like, I'm done.
Yeah, these guys are too good for that. Yeah, he just said draw.
I'm done. Obviously,
Because
Black
the
wants
draw can't be declined. It has to be accepted. So he just said draw. Yeah. He wouldn't say, I offer a draw, and Jan's like, let me think about it. That's draw.
But well, do they have the same rules where you offer it as U.S. chess, where you have to offer?
The rules
They're
don't
not
apply
going
to
by
them.
that?
The rules don't apply to
Right,
them.
right. They're above the law.
Right. When the game is a draw and it's obvious,
Yeah,
they
this is
don't
too-
care what
care-
they don't care what
there's
the
no
rules are.
Formality,
Yeah.
So if White offers a draw,
Alright.
Black always accepts.
But
It's
what
funny,
is the
one of the-
rule? What is
It's
it
the same. It's the same, but they don't,
So
it's not really a rule. It's just because
It isn't U.S. chess. It's a rule.
when you say it's a rule, if you break the
the
rule,
rule.
that doesn't
You don't
matter.
li-
Nothing
You get-
happens.
you get a warning,
Nothing happens.
really.
You don't even get a
Yeah.
warning. Joel Benjamin told me he loves when his opponent incorrectly offers a draw.
Yeah.
Like Joel's thinking about his move and the guy says draw. He likes that. He's like, I got an extra option. Like you're not supposed to your guys think about moving, you offer them a draw. But Joel says he likes that. He likes to be like, all
he knows
right.
what they're thinking.
He's like, all right, now I got, he might
Yeah,
even
give me information.
He might even
Right.
take it. He's just like, yeah, okay, good. That's good for me. I got the draw in hand.
You know, Zhang offered me a draw on my turn once.
If you're our YouTube editor, you can stop now.
Yeah.
Somebody put a thing, a marker.
I was like crushing him the whole game, and then I blundered a pawn. I was still slightly better according to the engine.
Who?
Against Zhang.
Oh, hey, can
And
you